No one walks out onto the field of play or the court without having practiced. Let's do some practice, shall we? Remember, the formula is altitude, which means the angle of the sun. In other words, at noon, the zenith, how high is the sun in the sky away from the horizon, equals 90 degrees minus arc distance. Remember, arc distance is the distance from wherever you are on the planet to wherever the subsolar point is. And we measure this in degrees of latitude. So let's assume the following. You are at 34 degrees north, and the sun is directly overhead at 2 degrees north, okay? Is 2 degrees north on the same side or the opposite side of the equator? In other words, the same hemisphere or the opposite hemisphere from your position? Same. Same side, subtract. So we're going to take 34 degrees minus 2 degrees equals 32 degrees. That's your arc distance. In other words, that's how many degrees you are when you are at 34 degrees north away from the subsolar point on the days when the subsolar point is at 2 degrees north. Okay. What now? Is that what you're asking me? The formula, of course. So you take 90 degrees, you can see that's the first part of the formula, minus 32, which we just determined is our arc distance, equals 58 degrees, which means on that day, when you are at 34 degrees north and the sun is directly overhead at 2 degrees north, the zenith at 34 degrees north, in other words, the sun at its highest angle in the sky in that day, will be 58 degrees in the sky. Take a look at this diagram here. It's a little fuzzy, but you can deal with it. You can see I have 34 degrees north on there with the yellow line, and you can see that I have 2 degrees north on there with the red line. Now you can see that purple arrow indicates the arc distance. So you take 34 minus 2 is 32 because these are on the same side of the equator. That's your arc distance. Let's practice again. You're at 34 degrees north and the sun is directly overhead at 2 degrees south. In other words, 2 degrees south is now the subsolar point. Are you on the same side or the opposite side of the equator when you are at 34 degrees north and the sun is at 2 degrees south? Opposite side. What do you do when you're on the opposite side? You add. So we take this time 34 degrees plus 2 equals 36 degrees. That's your arc distance. You're 36 degrees away from the subsolar point. What now? The formula. 90 minus 36, which is your arc distance, equals 54. There you go. That's the angle of the noon sun on that particular day. Again, take a look. I've got 34 degrees north in the yellow line, 2 degrees south in the red line. The purple arrow now is indicating your arc distance. 34 plus 2, opposite side add, equals 36. That's your arc distance. That's how many degrees away you are at 34 degrees north from the subsolar point when the subsolar point is at 2 degrees south. You may recall the subsolar point is migrating from 23.5 degrees north to 23.5 degrees south. Practice some more. Always practice more. If you want to be the best shortstop, you practice ground ball after ground ball after ground ball. You want to be the best point guard, you practice passing, shooting, and reading the field. You are at 50 degrees north, so I moved where you're at, and the sun is directly overhead at 22 degrees south. Same side or opposite side? Answer is opposite. What do you do when you're on the opposite side of the equator from the subsolar point? You add. 50 plus 22 is 72. That's your arc distance. You're not done yet because you have to plug the 72 into the formula. So what now? The formula, which is 90 minus 72, is 18. So that means that if you were at 50 degrees north and the sun was directly overhead at 22 degrees south, on that day, the sun would be 18 degrees above the horizon at its highest point in the sky, its zenith. Take a look. 50 degrees north, 22 degrees south on this diagram. Now you can see the purple arrow is indicating your arc distance. 50 plus 22 is 72. That's your arc distance. Excellent. Come on, let's practice one more. You're at 25 degrees south and the sun is directly overhead at 22 degrees south. Same side or opposite side? Same. What do? Subtract. 25 minus 22 is 3. That's 3 degrees. That's your arc distance. What now? Of course, the formula. And so you take 90 minus 3 is 87. That's the angle of the sun. Almost a 90-degree angle, but not quite 90. Okay, one more. You are at 53 degrees south, and the sun is directly overhead at 12 degrees north. Same side or opposite side? You should be able to just roll through this now. Opposite side. What do with opposite side? You add. 53 plus 12 is 65. That's your arc distance. You're 65 degrees away from the subsolar point. What now? The formula? 90 minus 65 is 25 degrees. That is the angle of the noon sun on that day if you are at 53 degrees south and the sun is directly overhead at 12 degrees north.